Alright, welcome to the third part of how to make a travel video series. This one's all about editing, and you can call me biased because I'm an editor, but I would say this is the most important part of the process. And you might say, well, what do you mean? How can you edit a good video if you haven't shot good footage? And that's true, you don't want to be doing what's known in the industry as polishing a turd. But at the same time, editing is such an important process of bringing your story to life, because if you take any movie you've ever seen, like pick your favorite movie in the world, if you watch that unedited, all that brilliant footage but unedited, not only would it go on for weeks, it would be boring as shit. So editing is where it all comes to life. And again, like with filming, I can't teach it all in the 10-minute tips video, but hopefully I can give you some ideas to make your footage entertaining and engaging for your audience. But the thing to bear in mind with editing is that, you know, any footage you get, there's like an infinite amount of possibilities about the way you could put it all together. And there was a good example, when I first started editing, I read this book by Walter Murch called it In the Blink of the Eye, second edition, and but he uses this great analogy of comparing the DNA of a chimpanzee and a human, and that 99% of the DNA between the two is identical. So they're both pretty much made up of the exact same stuff, but the outcome's completely different.
Take your stinking paws off me, you damn dirty ape!
Right, so let's dive right in. You've been on your trip, you've filmed everything, you've got home, you now got to edit all your footage. Where do I start from there? People like Espen, Mike, Molly, Andrew, they're all asking like, what software do I use? I edit with Final Cut X. Like for me, it's the best editing program out there. It's so fast and it's really great in the way you can organize and break down your footage and using metadata and things like that. I mean, for some of my clients I have to edit with Premiere, and Premiere is fine, but to me it's like an older, slower, outdated way of editing. It would literally take me twice as long to edit my travel videos with Premiere. But anyway, enough geeky ranting. Why is it good? Why do I like Final Cut X? But yeah, so you've got home from your trip, and now you've got mountains of footage to get through, and people often go like, how the hell do you edit like 9 months of footage? You start with all this footage, and then you just gradually break it down to the small moments and the individual shots, and then you slowly start rebuilding up and telling your story again. So with Final Cut X, I get all the footage, import it in, and I'll organize it by place, and then within those folders organize it by like the events that we did, the activities we did, whatever. And then once I get to one place, I can go through and I can mark all the good bits of footage. Because obviously your whole shot, even if you've got the best shot ever, you'll press record and you're adjusting the camera, and then you've got this cool shot, then after it, you don't need the rest. So I can mark that bit as good, I can mark the good bits of dialogue, highlight all of them, and then I can tell it just to show the favorite bits, and then suddenly you've broken your footage down to the best shots. And this is all before you've done anything on the timeline, and you can just start building up your story this way. So to give you an example of how I organise my footage and start editing a scene, I'm going to look here at a scene from my recent Philippines film where we went swimming with whale sharks. And basically the whole point of this kind of 6-minute scene was we did it, realised how messed up it was, realised we made a mistake, and so hopefully through the video people can learn from our mistake and not go swimming with them like we did. I've obviously got tons and tons of footage to play with here, and there's a lot of information to cover in this sort of 5-6 minute scene. So I've got footage of like all the crowds, got me talking to the camera, I've got tons of GoPro stuff, and I've talked before about how much I hate GoPro footage, and as well as me talking to the camera afterwards, explaining what we learned. So what I've done, within this folder for Cebu, I've got, you know, the date of the whale sharks, everything's in order. Then within this, I've got a folder of the stuff I shot on my Sony A7S, so that's all the B-roll of all the crowds and like, you know, the briefing and tons of people on the beach and things like that. I've got me talking to the camera whilst I was there actually in the moment. Then I've got a GoPro folder with all my footage of the sharks, and within that I've got keywords for shots that look really crowded with tons of people, shots where it's just like me and the shark, and then shots where it looks like it's just the whale sharks on their own. And then I've also got another subfolder for my sort of interview afterwards where I'm talking about everything that happened. And for this big talk, because I covered so many different topics within this sort of 20-minute ramble, I've done a keyword for each answer I do. And the reason I organise my footage this much is it means I can find any shot I want like that, because when you're editing, you want to be able to sort of stay in the creative flow, and if you're having to stop and start all the time to try and scroll through and find that shot you want, it's going to take forever. If you add all these keywords, break it all down, I'm like, oh, where's that shot where I'm talking about how busy it is? There it is. Okay, where's that shot of me in the water where it just looks like it's me and the shark? Oh, it's in that keyword. Boom, there we go, that'll do. And by doing all this organisation beforehand, it just makes the entire process so much quicker. You know, you get to organise your footage, you get to know your footage, you get to stay in the creative flow, and boom, you can get on with it. Now, a few little tips to keep in mind when you start actually editing a scene together is, when I start actually editing a scene, I usually start with the dialogue first, because your dialogue's the backbone to any scene that's going to be telling the story. Always try and keep the story moving forwards, you know. Are you telling the information in the most efficient way possible? Because if you're just repeating information, or if it's dragging on too long, you know, or if it's a funny scene but the joke's gone on too long, it's like, alright, we get it now, then just cut it out, just keep it moving forward, and that keeps your audience engaged. And then often when you've talked to the camera, like I'm doing right now, you'll find when you come to edit it, you've rambled on too long, so you have to cut bits out to sort of tell it in a more of an efficient way. And what people do for vlogs, or like I do for tips videos like this, is you can just do jump cuts, you know, in between your dialogue. And a jump cut is when you look at the exact same shot and it just cuts to later on. And they basically just send the whale sharks in line back and forth, and you get out the boat and you can swim and snorkel right by them. And these jump cuts, they can be quite distracting and disorientating to the audience sometimes, and it's okay for vlogs or tips videos like this where you're not too worried about the production values. But if you want it to look a bit more professional, you can hide it with B-roll, you know, cut away to what you're talking about, then the audience never knows you've made those edits, and they'll suddenly think you're really articulate. And they basically just send the whale sharks in line back and forth, and you get out the boat and you can swim and snorkel right by them. And then once your scene starts coming together, you watch it back and go, well, does this make sense? Will someone who's not been there know actually what we're doing, where we are, and what's going on? And often, if I find it's not doing that, and I don't have any other footage to help explain it, that's where I bring in the voiceover. Voiceovers are very good for sort of plugging narrative gaps and giving extra bits of information that you didn't film at the time. And another thing to keep in mind as well is don't have in-jokes. Don't have bits where it's like, oh, you have to be there for it to make sense. The audience wasn't there, so unless you've explained it to them, it's not going to be funny. Like, for example, on our HK to NY trip, we had the whole game of life with doing the push-ups. And so, if all we had was footage of someone doing a push-up and people laughing, the audience would be like, what's going on there? What's so funny? But at the start of each episode, in a sort of recap, I would reintroduce the rules for when it was necessary, so that later on, if someone's watching episode 6, but they never saw the original episode with the Game of Life in, they'd still understand what's going on and why we're doing the push-ups.
9+1. I just looked at everyone and I was like, oh shit.
So that's some tips when you're editing each individual scene of your trip, but obviously once you start putting the different scenes together and building up your film, there's other things to take into account as well. Now, one thing that's really important for a YouTube video is to sort of grab the audience's attention straight away. Like, if you don't get their attention in like the first few seconds, they'll just go and click on something else. So what I do for my film is like each one starts like a mini trailer for what's going to come up in the rest of the film, and usually the first sentence you hear just sums up straight away what we're doing.
For the next 7 weeks, I'm going to be backpacking with my mate James through Panama, Colombia, and Venezuela.
I'm not saying you have to do it like that, but it's just one example of just grabbing the audience's attention so they know straight away when they click on it what they're going to watch. An example of how not to do it is one of my older films when we did a road trip through Italy. This film starts out kind of like a movie with like just slow music and credits coming up, which starts explaining the backstory, and we're basically just ripping off Gladiator. It was a Gladiator font, Gladiator music, Gladiator style. But this was before I had a YouTube channel, so my target audience for this was just when I was going to play the video to my friends after the trip. You know, we had people on the trip and a few of the rest of us around a flat. Everyone's there to watch the film. We hit play on it, and then as each bit of text came up, it was basically an in-joke that everyone in that audience would get, and so each bit of text got a laugh. So it was okay for that audience, but now it's on YouTube. If someone hits play in it, it's going to be all this text coming up, and we're like, what the hell are they going on about? I mean, it does explain the backstory and stuff, but it is too slow for a YouTube opening. So if I was doing an Italy film now, it would just be like, right, for the next 10 days, we're going on a road trip through Italy doing yada yada yada. And another thing to consider when you're making a longer film rather than just a short vlog is you're going to have to keep your audience engaged for a lot longer time. And so a key factor to this is pacing your film. Like, if the whole thing's just too slow, they'll just get bored. If it's all just running at full pace, like super fast the entire time, they'll get tired and, you know, stop watching as well. So it's about knowing when to go fast and slow and have peaks and troughs, then build to a climax. It's kind of similar to how a band should structure a set list for a concert, or sort of the lost art of making a mixtape.
Now, the making of a good compilation tape is a very subtle art, many do's and don'ts. You gotta kick it off with a killer to grab attention. Then you got to take it up a notch. But you don't want to blow your wad, so then you got to cool it off a notch. There are a lot of rules.
Another thing I get asked a lot about is music. Like Omar and Jeff here are like asking, well, how did I get away with copyrighted music in HK2NY? And the reason I used copyrighted music was because I didn't know if anyone was going to watch it. You know, I'm not saying that to be modest. I didn't know if anyone would watch it. I was just like, I'm going to just make this exactly how I want, use whatever music I want, and then if people watch it, great. If not, who cares? I've got a cool souvenir for myself. But if you use copyrighted music on YouTube, one of three things will happen. Either nothing, it won't get recognized and you'll get away with it, or they'll recognize that you've used copyrighted music and you can't monetize it, but the copyright owner can monetize it. And for me, that's a good compromise. It's like we're helping each other out, you know? Or the other thing is they'll just block your video, either completely outright or sometimes just on some devices. And people say, how'd you get away with the HK2NY? Well, some of the episodes I haven't, you know, like episode 6 and episode 11 don't work on some devices and in some countries. So, by the way, if you want to watch those episodes, if you're having trouble watching any of it, they all work on my website. So, to get around this, from after HK2NY, all I used was library music. You got Audio Network, Premium Beat, websites like that. Have a Google around for like what free music you can find, because there's often people happy to let you use their music for free in exchange for promo in their video kind of thing. But what I do now is there are these companies that like monetization networks, so they take 30% of the revenue from my channel, which is nothing, and in exchange I have free access to a library music website. So that's a nice way of getting music for free, and I've been approached by lots of these companies as soon as my channel started. So have a Google around for them, and you know, even if you're just beginning, they'll still be happy to help you out. One trap to avoid with music is there's so many travel videos out there that just put some bland, chill out house music on, and it's just boring. They all just sound the same, and it's like for me, I like having big epic music on, because you know, we're on a big epic adventure around the world. Let's have some exciting music on. Let's like, you know, give some people some emotion rather than some dreary lounge music. So, you know, you don't have to use film score stuff. You can have rock music, fucking hip hop, whatever you like, but just give the music a bit of excitement and a bit of an emotion rather than just some dreary, bland stuff that's just an afterthought, like, oh, I've done the video, let's just whack that track on. Like, music's such a key way to get an emotion out of the audience, and it can be like the emotional bridge from your footage to the person. So yeah, really think hard about what music you want, because it can really bring your videos to life. A couple of last quick things to mention with music. Firstly, I'll often start out my edit by finding out the right music track. You know, once I've organized my footage and broken it down, I'll find the right track, because that'll dictate what kind of vibe I'm going to go with for that scene. Another thing, once you've found the right track, don't just slap it on, you know, mix it around the dialogue, but more importantly is edit the track. Learn to count the beats in the bar so you can edit down the track, and so you get the best bits of that track to emphasize your edit.
It's been good fun though. I have to come back and do it properly sometime.
Another question I get asked a lot is, how do I create the maps? Like Bernie's asked me this here, and I create those in After Effects, and I'll put a link in the description to like a tutorial on how you can do it. But the basic gist is, I get a map from Free Vector Maps, and then I'll go onto Google, and on Google Maps I'll track the route that I've done so I can sort of roughly get the right route, and then I'll layer that on top of the vector map, use text to put on like the place names, and then put some coloring in, put some texture layers, create a shape layer to create the route, animate the route, and then, you know, put some camera movements on, put some texture on, and there you go. And maps are a great way of just sort of explaining the geography of what's going on. I mean, it sounds obvious, but sometimes people might be watching your video going, wait a minute, where are they again? Where have they just traveled from, where to? So they can really just simplify your story for the viewer. And if you don't have After Effects, or can't afford it, or don't want to learn how to animate them, then just film a map. Just get a map and point to it and film, and that's a great way to get around it.
The fight will come to men on both fronts.
I nearly forgot to mention color grading in this, such an important part, but if you don't know what color grading is, I guess the easy way to explain it is it's kind of like with Instagram when you go and do your filters but edit it manually. It's a bit like that. I'm not going to explain how to do it. If you're using Final Cut X or Premiere, just go on YouTube and search Final Cut X color grading tutorials. But one thing I will say is anytime you're learning a new tool, it's kind of tempting to go overboard with it. But for me, with color grading, I mainly just sort out the white balance, the contrast, exposure, and saturation. I don't want to go for an overly stylized look because I want my videos to look real. I want people to feel like they're there. And if I've got this really kind of desaturated, kind of cool, grungy look, it looks nice, but it doesn't look real, so it can leave the audience feeling a little bit detached from what they're actually seeing. Now, once you've got your edit done, or you think it's close to being done, before you upload it, just show it to someone, anyone. Show it to a friend, family member or something, but don't send them the link. I'm saying show it to them with them sitting there, because you can easily get lost in an edit and sort of forget how it works, and it's always good to step away from it and come back. But as soon as you play your video with someone sitting there, you can immediately tell what's wrong with it pacing wise. Before they even say a word, just by them being there, you suddenly go, oh, hang on, that shot's too long, or that's cut a bit too fast, or whatever, and get their feedback and get their thoughts in it. And because they might suddenly go, hang on mate, what's going on here? And you realize you might have to explain it better within the video, or maybe they didn't understand what someone said, so that's when you subtitle it and little things like that. But showing your videos to people and getting their reactions is such a useful way to really refine and make your video a lot better. Then once your video's done, if you do want to start out a YouTube channel and don't know where to begin, a couple of good guys to check out are Video Influencers and Daryl Leaves. Their channels have got tons of tips about how to get your channel started. So that's it. Hopefully there's lots of good bits of advice there to help you start editing your films, and realize this one was a bit longer than the previous two, but there's lots of stuff to cover. Next week, the final video in the series will be about enjoying your trip versus filming your trip, which I've had a lot of questions about. So yeah, make sure you stick around for that one by hitting subscribe, follow me on Facebook, Instagram, check out the t-shirt store, and then yeah, I'll see you next time.